All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today. My name is Tim Hafey, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Western District of Virginia. And we gathered you today to talk about drugs and drug trafficking, which, despite the best efforts of law enforcement, continues to be a problem in the Roanoke Valley. I don't think it's news to say that this is a problem that affects countless citizens in our community. Drug sellers continue to push all kinds of illegal substances to our young people, to people all over this community who still struggle with addiction. And the problem really changes over time. We're seeing, unfortunately, more heroin lately. We're seeing the rise of synthetic drugs. The problem's complex, and it requires a multi-agency, multi-front response. Strong enforcement that's targeted to the right individuals, and support for treatment and prevention, which we're trying to do in this office and support the agencies that do that. But we're here today to talk about one particular new tool that we're fortunate is now coming to Roanoke, and that is HIDTA. HIDTA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. It is a program started back in 1988 by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, commonly known as the Drug Czar's Office. The idea is that we're going to put some federal resources through this HIDTA program into communities that have had a demonstrated problem with drug trafficking. And really, you could put the pin down any place in the map and it would qualify. Because again, this is a problem that transcends socioeconomic boundaries, transcends communities, transcends jurisdictional lines. But HIDTA brings together coordinated strategies to address this problem. It's federal agencies, it's state and local agencies working together with some resources from HIDTA to share information about targets, to co-locate and actually work together side by side and deconflict, make sure that we're not duplicating efforts among agencies, to provide the very best of training to our narcotics investigators, to provide the very best equipment. HIDTA provides that beyond what our local departments sometimes have. And then critically, to share information throughout membership in the HIDTA. HIDTA is a national program, and we now can put case information into a database that allows us to share information about individuals, about patterns that we've seen with other agencies throughout the Washington-Baltimore region. We're a member now of the Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. Those are important new steps that we have obtained through membership in the HIDTA. The makeup of our local HIDTA, you can see behind me people from agencies from federal, state, and local jurisdictions. We are very fortunate that DEA and ATF are participating and supporting the investigations that will be run out of this HIDTA, that Homeland Security and ICE is participating, that the postal inspectors, FBI, and the U.S. Marshal Service, all federal law enforcement agencies, will be supporting this endeavor. In addition, the Virginia State Police, Roanoke City, Roanoke County, the town of Vinton, and the town of Salem, all of those departments and agencies are investing their manpower into this agency. And we're fortunate that now with this new HIDTA funding, we're going to be able to co-locate all of those agencies in one space out in Roanoke County. And the Roanoke Valley Regional Drug Initiative will be run finally in one place, coordinating efforts together in Roanoke County. And they're going to, as I said, have access to training provided by HIDTA. They're going to have access to equipment provided by HIDTA. They're going to put case information into a database that will allow them to get information from our partners in Baltimore, a big heroin source, for example, and be smarter about our targets. And it's going to give us money, practically very helpful in a time where everybody is stressed for resources. The initial funding is about $83,000. We hope that year to year that money will increase when this task force, this Roanoke Valley Regional Drug Initiative, shows results. HIDTA will invest more money in Roanoke. Now, the primary focus is going to be on drug trafficking organizations, not on street-level dealers. The kind of investigators that we're fortunate will be a part of this need to devote their resources to people who are selling, who are manufacturing, who are importing these drugs. The goal here is to aim for the head of these organizations and the people close to the head, the managers, the leaders. That will be our focus. And that takes intelligence, that takes information. And our hope, again, is that when we combine forces and we put all these agencies together, we'll know who those people are and we'll more appropriately be able to target our investigative resources toward them. There's also going to be a renewed emphasis on package interdiction. Since we've seen some change in marijuana laws in some western states, there's been more shipped marijuana coming into this area, and there will be a focus on package interdiction as well with this HIDTA initiative. So overall, we're very hopeful that this new tool and this new funding will help us take something that has already been effective and make it even better. We've been fortunate in the Roanoke area that we've had a good level of law enforcement coordination through the years, but we can always do better. And our hope is that this tool will allow us to coordinate efforts and continue to do our best to meet this evolving drug threat. So I want to stop now and introduce Howard Hall. Howard is the Chief of Police in Roanoke County, and he and his agency will be the host of this new drug initiative. Their department is the fiscal agent that receives the money, and I want him here to say a few words. Howard?
Thanks, Tim, and Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to represent my state and local counterparts this morning, and as well on the executive board for the Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. From our perspective, we had actually started to talk about and work towards some better coordination amongst the local agencies earlier last year. Then the opportunity for HIDTA came along, and I'd like to thank our partners at DEA for doing the background work and the application that got us accepted into HIDTA. When HIDTA was approved and we had an opportunity to meet with the folks from the Baltimore-Washington HIDTA, it became pretty obvious to us at the local level that this was an opportunity and that HIDTA provided a mechanism for us to literally come together, as Mr. Heafy described. So we are putting all of our drug investigative resources together under one roof with common leadership to be able to coordinate drug investigations, starting at the bottom, at the local level, and at the local department level. We still will respond to community drug complaints and those sorts of things. But this will give us the opportunity, as the U.S. Attorney described, to work up that chain of organization and start trying to interrupt the drug trafficking organizations that are bringing these substances into our community and creating all the public safety problems around them, which obviously includes the human toll as well as the crimes that occur around the drug trade and drug trafficking and drug users, from property crime to violent crime. We feel like this coordination will allow us not only to consolidate our resources, but to coordinate our investigations so that we're focusing on the right people and we're doing that together. It will certainly improve our intelligence capability and ability to share information and will, I believe, very much enhance the partnerships we have with our federal colleagues. And the reality is, as we move up drug organizations, we need the resources of the federal government as these things spread beyond the Roanoke Valley and even the state of Virginia. We have an active drug task force that we work with the DEA currently, and we believe this will help us to enhance that effort and make sure that the information is flowing properly up that chain and down that chain so that we're all working together towards the common goal of keeping this community safe. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. One last thing, I want to say that the motivation for this really was an effort by some of us here in local law enforcement to reach out and ask for this resource. This is not a reflection of some sudden new spike in drug use or abuse in Roanoke. Unfortunately, this has been a persistent problem that we have dealt with in this community for a long time. And the designation as a high-intensity drug trafficking area could have easily happened 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This does not reflect, in other words, sort of a new emerging crisis. We have had this issue, as do many communities, And we thought that if we brought this HIDTA resource, we put together some materials and asked for it, we might be successful in capitalizing on the good work that we've already done. We've also been successful in getting HIDTA designation to a few counties in Southwest Virginia in a different HIDTA, the Appalachia HIDTA, that focuses mainly on prescription drugs. A new resource that reflects a desire to do more coordination with our counterparts in West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee, who are members of that HIDTA. So this is something that's been a priority for me as U.S. Attorney, to try to bring more support for the fine folks that are doing the work on the street investigating these patterns of drug trafficking. And some of this is going to result in work for us. There ideally will be cases that are made because of the coordinated work. Some of those cases will come to federal court, some of those cases will be tried in state court. Our counterparts, Don Caldwell in Roanoke City, Randy Leach in Roanoke County, Tom Bowers in Salem, are standing by also prepared to try cases, to handle cases that are generated by this task force. And we're very appreciative of the cooperation of those prosecutors as well. So with that, I would be glad, I think Chief Hall and I would be glad to take any questions.
I'd point out, I forgot to mention it a minute ago, that I believe even as we speak, there's an indictment going on over in federal court through the U.S. Attorney's Office of an individual that was arrested locally at a case that started in the town of Benton and grew into the county and the city, resulted in significant seizures of narcotics, led to what today is happening is a federal indictment. So this individual, will be subject to, that sort of penalty.
What are there any sort of qualitative or quantitative sort of things you can point to that Washington uses as a threshold to say, yes, this is a problem in this area? I guess, you touched on that by saying that this is something that you could have done 2 to 5 years ago, and I'm kind of wondering, why now, and why, how do you sort of say, yes, we do have this problem?
Yeah, with any federal program, there are measurements in place, targets that we have established. And that is primarily in the form of arrests, seizures of drugs, and asset forfeiture. Based on historical levels, we put some numbers together as to what our aspirations are. And those, we believe, will be easily attained, frankly exceeded, when we have the coordinated focus that we have. But again, that does not reflect our sense that there is some sort of newly emergent problem. The only thing that's new that I would say is that we are seeing more heroin, and that is distressing. Several years ago, it was in Roanoke City in particular, a lot of crack cocaine, and while that's still here, there's been an increase in use of heroin. And why that is hard to say. Some of it is, a gateway starts with prescription drug use and abuse, and people sort of graduate from that when it's harder to get prescription drugs to street-level heroin. But the nature of this problem is fluid. It changes. And hopefully, again, when we share resources and we're talking to each other, we're going to be more on top of the kind of evolution that we see within the valley.
Just to clarify, so you apply to be part of HIDTA. The federal government doesn't look at, oh my gosh, Roanoke's got a problem. We're
That's right.
making you part of HIDTA.
We put together a proposal and asked to be accepted into the Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. The HIDTAs nationwide are, I think they're 12 or 14. They're sort of regional. There's an Atlanta HIDTA, there's an Appalachia HIDTA, and then there's this Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. And we asked to become part of, an extension of, the Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. And we see a lot of heroin from Baltimore as a source city, and not just heroin, but cocaine also at times flows south from the Baltimore-Washington area. So it made sense for us to share information with the folks there, since some of the organizations sort of reach from here to there.
Are there any other areas in Virginia that have this designation as well, aside from far southwest Virginia that you mentioned?
Yes, Richmond and I believe the Tidewater area also are members of the Washington-Baltimore HIDTA. And there may be other parts of Western Virginia, if I have anything to say about it, that eventually get HIDTA designation. Again, this has been a priority for me to try to get more of this federal resource to our state and local partners and do better at coordination.
In the definition of the, just talking about the program, it sort of says that the first year of this is really sort of defining and coming up with a plan. So is it fair to say that we wouldn't sort of see the fruits of this and the action of this until months or a year on down the line? And if you could talk a little bit about sort of what that assessing sort of entails, given the fact that you sort of already know what the problem is and already have some ideas of the solutions. I mean, does it physically take a year before we sort of start to see action on that?
Yeah. You know, there, yes and no.
Okay.
You know, immediately, as Chief Hall said, everybody's coming under one roof. That is happening as we speak, and that is a significant step forward. I mean, obviously, when people work shoulder to shoulder in the same space, they're going to be better at, you know, deconflicting and sharing information. So I think there's an immediate practical impact in terms of how smart we're going to be. We're also going to immediately have access to that database with our Washington-Baltimore partners to learn more about information that they're getting up there about distribution down into our area, and vice versa. We're going to be able to provide them with information about what we're seeing. That's also going to make us smarter. Now, in terms of cases, in terms of prosecutions, the kinds of organizations that we're trafficking and the complexity of them are cases that take a longer time to develop. You don't make a complicated drug conspiracy case with a couple of drug buys and arrests. Actually, if you do that, you're not maximizing the intelligence value, and that takes time. So long term, I think ideally our case numbers will increase. You'll see more substantial drug prosecutions, both in federal court here and in state court, and that will be more of an incremental endeavor.
I think from a, you know, HIDTA has an evaluation component, obviously, and it takes some time, you know, for data and cases to be made for that to really show much. I agree with the U.S. Attorney that as we combine our resources locally, that will show some immediate results in terms of those detectives working together and making better cases that will start showing up in state, you know, and maybe a little bit longer timeline because of the complexity in federal court. And then over the longer term, you know, we'll see those numbers overall start to rise in terms of the cases and arrests and seizures and things of that nature. And I believe just because we've been working on this agreement, we've already seen in the case that I just cited is an example. While we've been in this process, our detectives have already started working closer together, and I think our communications with and work with the federal partners has also started to increase, and we've already started to see a couple cases. So I'd say maybe we've already seen some results, and I think we'll see more of that as this progresses.
Anything else we can answer?
Sorry, I had one more. I'm going on. I'm interested about the postal involvement with the postal, just because, you know, California and Colorado and Washington, and is that a relatively new sort of involvement in this whole program? Is the shipping element of it, and, you know, packages, just monitoring it that way?
Excuse me, HIDTA nationally has done a lot on parcel interdiction. You know, I mentioned that we're members of the Appalachia HIDTA. That includes Louisville, Kentucky, which is a big hub for Federal Express, or UPS. I'm not sure which. I think it's UPS. And they spend a lot of time, the resources of that HIDTA, doing package interdiction at the UPS sorting facility. We have 2 postal inspectors that cover the entirety of this region. They are very stretched for resources, and I think that now that they're going to be supporting the HIDTA and getting the benefit of the sort of shared manpower, that they're going to be better at identifying and intercepting these suspicious packages. You know, we have seen more marijuana being shipped through the mail around the country. You know, there are legal places now, obviously, where you can grow it and put it in the mail and ship it somewhere where it's not legal. I do think that has increased nationally, not here more than anywhere else, but we are going to be focused on that, as well as the sort of street-level drug organizations that we talked about before.
It's another example of where we can come together. You know, locally, we've got some abilities to help the Postal Inspector do that package interdiction, and if jointly we intercept narcotics, drugs, dangerous substances, at that point, those are drugs that never hit our streets and never cause anybody any harm.
And information based on that package that goes to our partners elsewhere. That, again, that's the coordination benefit. All right, and if there's nothing else, thank you all very much for coming. We very much appreciate it.